McKinsey Report News Hour. We're now in the 18th day by the heavenly calendar. First month, 18th by the heavenly calendar. And I'm trying to do something here. Hold on a second. And this is Tim Miller sitting in for the second king of Cheon Il Guk Constitution. And let's go to our little trip around the kingdom right now in Chungkyung, Tennessee. It's a nice 51 degrees and getting up to 81 today, partly cloudy now, and then partly sunny and very warm today. Tonight, getting down to just 52, remaining partly cloudy. And in father's hometown, Jeongju in North Carolina province, Korea, clear and 28 right now, getting down to 18 tonight. Tomorrow, plenty of sun and a high of 40. Cheongung Palace in northeast Pennsylvania, mostly cloudy and 35. Areas of drizzle this morning, otherwise low clouds, high of 40. And tonight, cloudy with areas of drizzle. Some fog will reduce visibility, low of 34. The Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, 68 and mostly cloudy right now. Remaining mostly cloudy during the day, windy and humid with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm mainly later. 83 degrees for a high today. And then tonight, a few thunderstorms, some severe, breezy and humid early, otherwise cloudy, low of 68. And then at the Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently 38, and some clouds, partly cloudy during the night, low of 28. Tomorrow mostly sunny and high of 48. And then let's see, at the Gunma Palaces in Japan, 47 and mostly cloudy. Passing shower or two this evening, otherwise partly cloudy, low of 41 tonight, 57 for a high tomorrow. Guangzhou, Guangdong Province, China, 74, cloudy and clear tonight, 58 for a low. Tomorrow, sunny to partly cloudy and nice, high of 77. And let's go to Father's Word here and see what he has in store for us today. And today we are in the book on the root of the universe. Root of the universe. So Father says that the 가장 근본의 문제는, so the most fundamental problem or fundamental issue, 마음과 몸이 싸우는 일로 시작하여 begins with the fact that the mind and body are fighting. 우주적인 보석을 매장한 기지를 잃어버렸다는 사실을 몰랐던 것입니다. 우주적인 보석을 매장한 기지를 잃어버렸다. We did it, and the fact that people haven't known that they lost the base as in military base or base of operations, that kind of thing, where a jewel of universal significance, universal not in the sense of everywhere, but the universe, significance for the universe. So there's this base where there was a jewel buried there, and this jewel had a 보석, 우주적인 보석, had significance for the universe, but that was lost, and people didn't even know that. 내적인 면에서 자기를 통일하는 길은 자기를 완성시키는 사랑을 발전하는 길이라는 사실을 아무도 몰랐습니다. No one realized that the path of bringing unity within oneself and to complete oneself is the path of developing love, the path of developing love. 그것은 우주 전부를 해독하고 나서야 발견할 수 있는 것입니다. And that information can only be obtained once someone has completely deciphered the entire universe. All right, praise God. And Father has, in fact, deciphered the entire universe. He understands the entire universe. And that is why he still lives today. Please don't say, when Father was alive. He's alive today. Ask any Christian, does Jesus live? And they say, "Oh, yes, he does. Jesus lives. Of course he lives." And that is their mindset. And I hope that we can correct ourselves if we do not have the same or similar mindset regarding Father. That Father lives. And this is what this is 3-day workshop stuff, right? 3-day workshop. The very first workshop that you attended, when the lecturer talked about spirit world, what did he say about spirit world? He said it's not someplace far, far away. It's right here. It's right here. Right? And in fact, human beings are existing in both the physical world and the spirit world. And so, when people lose our physical bodies, when our physical bodies are no longer sustainable, or once they complete their mission, or as much of the mission as they can, then we shed our physical body. And Father uses the analogy of someone in springtime shedding their winter coat. You no longer need your winter coat when spring comes, when the temperature is rising. And that's the analogy that Father used in explaining the transition between the physical world and the spirit world. Right? So Father uh, is as alive as he ever was, just that he doesn't have a physical body. And so because he doesn't have a physical body, we're not able to sense him with our 5 physical senses. That's unfortunate. And one day, when everything is back in order according to God's original uh, ideal of creation, we will be able to see him and hear him and smell him and touch him and feel him, be able to, he will embrace us and we will embrace him, and so forth and so on. So anyway, right now he is alive. He is alive, and he is also leading the providence, not only in the spirit world, but in the physical world as well. And the second king is his representative and heir, his representative in the physical world. And so he works through the second king, but he also is able to communicate with each of us, but on a lower level compared to the king. Why? Why? And why is it that the king is able to have a closer communication with Father than we do? 심정, 심정. It all gets down to 심정, 심정. And what is 심정? 심정 is that irrepressible impulse of the heart to give love to an object partner so as to experience love and joy. So, people talk about AI right now and all the jobs that the AI is going to take over, and people will lose their jobs by the millions and tens of millions and so forth and so on. But there are some things that the AI cannot do, and I would suggest that anything involving 심정, the AI cannot do. A few days ago, I saw where one Catholic leader, and I can't remember, an archbishop or maybe the Pope, I'm not sure, said that priests should not use AI to compose their homilies. I guess in the Catholic Church, they refer to sermons as homilies. Should not use AI to compose their homilies. Yeah. Way back, decades ago, when sound recording and tape recorders were, the thing. I was in Japan, and I guess one Buddhist priest or one temple started doing their what do you call it? Their chanting by tape recorder. In other words, they would tape it and then they would play it over the loudspeaker when the priests were, I don't know, they're back in the back room doing whatever it is that they do. And this was a big scandal back then. I think actually today, um, Buddhist prayers and maybe Muslim prayers as well, Islamic prayers may be done electronically. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised. But the complaint that people had, especially in Japan, was that there's a lack of 심정, and if you just do it electronically. And I think people will sense that, and that will be a problem. And uh, ministers or priests who use AI to do their whatever sermons or homilies or chants or whatever, their prayers, they're going to be losing. Um, they're going to be losing followers, I guess, or losing their congregation. I expect. Because what there are two things that the archangel cannot have. Doesn't matter how scientifically advanced he is or anything else. There are two things he cannot have. One is lineage, and the other is shimjong. Lineage and shimjong. These are the unique assets of human beings. And AI cannot replace shimjong, and it cannot replace lineage. But especially, most of us, we will be a part of the lineage, God's lineage. We are, of course, as blessed center families, a part of that lineage now. But as far as being a part of the anointed lineage, and that's a few generations down the line. But certainly, shimjong is one thing that we can develop now. Ah, boy, but how do you develop shimjong? The best way to do that is to go to hell. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's kind of a yeah. Why? Because God is in hell. It's God is in hell. Um, God is in hell because his children are in hell. And so God is a father describes God as a 영어의 하나님. Not English. 영어 does not mean English in this case. It means captive. God is captive. He's captive. He's a captive God. He's imprisoned, and that's why Father talks about all the time talking about liberating him. And recently, I think we had a quotation from Father where he said, saving humanity, that's easy. Much more difficult is liberating God. That is the ultimate mission of the Messiah, to liberate God. Okay. Okay. Well, praise God. Okay. Meanwhile, the war is going on, and as I've said, this is a war that really causes God a great deal of pain. Particularly, any war causes him pain, but particularly because this war is a war between and among people of faith. It is a war that God would like to see ended as quickly as possible. And I see that U.S. and Iran are going to be meeting on Thursday. I think that's true. I saw that headline a while ago. Let me just make sure that that wasn't an old headline. U.S. and Iran meet Thursday. Yeah. No, maybe not. Oh, no. Sorry, that was an old headline. Yeah. I'm sorry. No, there's no. That was a February headline. Okay. I correct myself on that. Yeah, I gotta be careful. Gotta look at the dates of these stories, because they sometimes you sometimes see old ones coming up. All right. All right. Today, I want to move away, keep away from the war as much as possible. And today I'm going to talk about Obamacare, and I want to talk about Obamacare because it's a good reason, it's a good way for us to discuss why the government should not be involved in healthcare. Because Obamacare is, well, it's having difficulties to say the least. Uh, let's look at this Joe Rogan piece on Breitbart. just as kind of as a way of an introduction, I suppose. That Joe Rogan convinces Steve O men can transition into women. Oh, kind of a common sense thing. Joe Rogan convinced Steve-O that men do not belong in women's restrooms during a discussion about transgenderism on Wednesday's episode of the Joe Rogan Experience. You make a very, very good point, the Jackass star admitted, adding, "All right, you've convinced me." The conversation began after Steve-O recalled meeting a transgender person who he said described to me a level of oppression that genuinely broke my heart. I'm leaving out the F word there, noting that the trans individual said they were not allowed to use the bathroom at their work. That's not true. They're just not allowed to use the bathroom. That doesn't align with their biological sex, Rogan replied. The podcast host continued, I genuinely think there's people that feel like they are in the wrong biological sex, but there's also people that are perverts, and they have a thing called autogenophilia. And what that is they get turned on by pretending to be women. They get excited by it and they want to be around women, and they're creeps. So you give them a effing Willy Wonka golden ticket to go into the woman's locker room and the woman's bathroom to stare at women and pretend you're a woman when you're just a crazy man. I don't doubt that that is real, and I know that it's a super complex, nuanced thing, Steve O responded. Rogan added, but here's what's not complex. What is your chromosomes? This is the same thing for competing. All these effing mental gymnastics that seemingly intelligent people do to justify biological males competing with females. Right, Steve said. Rogan elaborated, especially speaking as a man who has daughters, there are creeps. And if you give a creep, and I'm not saying all trans people are creeps, but a lot of these effing people that are in trouble for going into women's bathrooms dressed as a woman with a beard and a hard on are just that. They're creeps. They're crazy men. And these crazy men, their entire life, they would get beaten up for that. And now, all of a sudden, they have to be accepted. So you've got two things going on at the same time. Right, for sure, Steve concurred, to which Joe Rogan replied. And by the way, it's men that are the problem. No one gives an F about trans men going into the men's bathroom. Come on in. Who cares? Right, the Jackass star reiterated. Rogan went on to stress, you can't say you're not allowed to use the bathroom where you work. That's not true. You're just not allowed to use the women's room where other women are in there because you're not a woman. You know what? You make a very, very good point, Steve admitted. Steve went on to say that he didn't get the impression that the transgender person he talked to was one of these creepy pervert men Rogan had been describing. I didn't get any of this sense that this was a creepy pervert, anything like that, he said. They don't have to be a creepy pervert, but it's still a man, Rogan argued, to which Steve replied, understood. I just thought, man, I heard what they had to say about, politicians trying to put them in internment camps. Who's doing that? What politicians are saying they should be put in internment camps? Rogan asked. There might be one kook out there that's saying that to try to get attention. There's no movement to try to put transgender people in internment camps. The podcast host went on to ask Steve, do you know who's killed more people than ICE this year? Trans shooters. Do you know the majority of these high school shootings have been transgender people? I did not know that, Steve answered. Rogan continued, yeah, it's a lot of them. You know why? Because they're giving them psych medications. They're giving them a bunch of crazy hormones, and a lot of them probably have mental struggles already. And they're ostracized from society and fill in the blank. Then they're empowered by thinking that the world has done something bad to them and that there's like a genocide against trans people. They attack J.K. Rowling and they attack all these people. Martina Navratilova, who's like a famous lesbian for being a bigot because she doesn't want biological men competing with women in tennis. It's nuts, man. And it's like either you go by biology or you do not. Either you go by XY chromosomes, or then you're in this weird effing gray area where someone could just tell you they're a woman, And that's how you get men in women's prisons. All right, you've convinced me, Steve-O replied. All right, so Joe Rogan uh, gets a victory. Apparently, I don't know if this guy was just saying that for the camera, but yeah, Joe Rogan, I think, made an excellent argument. Yes, it gets down to chromosomes, doesn't it? It does get down to chromosomes, X and Y chromosomes. Okay. Uh, but we live in a crazy age and era, and the Bible, of course, talks about this, where it says that, people will say that good is bad and bad is good. It didn't get really into the aspect of men and women or transgenderism so much. The Old Testament, I think, Leviticus, I think, talks about men dressing as women, and women dressing as men, and so that's why I think in conservative churches, I think this is still true. I know it was true in the 1970s when we were doing, church work, 80s as well, that they would not allow women to enter the church if they were wearing pants. You had to wear a dress or a skirt in order to enter the church. So there were actually more than a few churches like that back then. I don't know if that is still true. Okay. All right, yes. And so, but certainly the two are different, and it's good. The fact that they're different is good. I mean, Father, always, we're not often always, but often would say, we could not have a world that had only men. We cannot have a world that has only women. It requires both. Requires both, and for us to have a world that actually functions. And if you're born as a man, be a man. And if you're born as a woman, be a woman. And I think a lot of growing up has to do with understanding who you are and accepting who you are, and not trying to make yourself into something that you are not, and not trying to be something that you are not. And it's an important part of growing up, an important part of maturing. Understand what God has in store for you. And people like to say, "Oh, but I'm free. I'm free." But rule number one of freedom, remember, there is no freedom outside of the principle. And if you are a man who is trying to pretend to be a woman, then you are outside the principle. That is not freedom. That is not freedom. Okay. That is like Joe Rogan is saying, that's just creepy stuff. And it does not work. Of course, I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm sure that everybody's watching this has an excellent idea of what they are, and all the men are very good men, and all the women are very good women. All right, let's go to Obamacare. This is on Epic Times, and I want to do this because we're going to get into the role of government in healthcare. And of course, in the Cheon Il Guk Constitution, the government has no role in healthcare. Government is not allowed to be involved in healthcare. And in other words, healthcare is privatized. And prices would be a lot cheaper in America today, according to many experts, if it was privatized, and if government regulations were removed from the industry. Okay. Anyway, let's take a look at what's going on here. 3 reasons why Obamacare is so hard to fix. It says, despite persistent efforts from both parties, disagreement continues over the role of government in providing health care. And this is an important point. So let's try to understand what's going on here. Obamacare had problems even before it launched in 2014. Marketplace websites were glitchy during the open enrollment period, frustrating many would-be customers. Sweeping changes ushered in by the Affordable Care Act, the law creating Obamacare, all but guaranteed that premiums would increase, which they did by 23% in the program's first year. And by the way, my wife and I, we never joined Obamacare. In fact, we did something that probably is not recommended. Don't do this at home. We we went without health insurance until we turned 65, until we were old enough to get onto Medicare. All right, because that we've been living overseas, and of course when I was if I worked for companies in America, which I did, off and on, I had and we had health insurance through the companies, but I guess in around the early 2000s or so, um, we were no longer doing that, and our kids were off, and they were doing their own, healthcare stuff, and so we just sort of winged it for a while, for a few years, until we were able to get onto Medicare. So we were never on Obamacare, just to sort of put that out there. Let's see here. Sweeping changes ushered in by the Affordable Care Act, the law creating Obamacare, all but guaranteed that premiums would increase, which they did by 23% in the program's first year. And of course, Obama said that it was going to be cheaper, right? And it turned out to be a lie. And it said that you could keep your existing policy, which turned out to be a lie. And what else? Anyway, pretty much everything said about it was a lie. Even so, public opinion swung in favor of Obamacare starting in 2017 and remains positive, according to KFF health tracking polls. More than 24 million people were insured through the program by 2025. And insurers learned to thrive under the new rules, more than doubling annual revenue to $1.1 trillion. Yeah, so this is one of the things that Republicans have been pointing out, that Obamacare has been great for insurance companies and consistently generating profit between 2014 and 2024. Problems do persist, however. Premiums have more than doubled over 12 years. Some consumers have only a few plans to choose from, and flaws in the program's design continue to waste taxpayer dollars. By the way, right now, my wife and I are, since we're not in the U.S., we're not able to we're not able to take advantage of Medicare. So we're on the South Korean national health insurance, which is it's actually something that the Democrats would love. It's a single payer system. And it's one policy for everyone, same policy for everyone. You don't get a choice. And the premiums also are, the government, actually it's the public corporation, but essentially it's the government, calculates your premium for you, and then they notify you, this is your premium this year, and you have to pay that, including legal foreign residents. Once you've been in the country 6 months, you get a notice in the mail saying, congratulations, you're now qualified for a compulsory induction into the national health insurance. Compulsory, yes. Anyway, so that's what the Democrats call the single payer system, where there is no competition. For other things, so you get separate insurance for cancer or for other stuff, but for the general, regular stuff, you have to use the government health insurance. Anyway, so that's probably something that that Americans do not want to have. Anyway, we'll get into that. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have proposed solutions, many with bipartisan support. Yet permanent reform remains elusive. The reason may have less to do with the ideas themselves, or more to do with most persistent disagreement between Republicans and Democrats, the role of the federal government. Here are the 3 commonly proposed remedies for problems with Obamacare and why those problems remain. 1, increase plan options. Of the more than 1,100 health insurers doing business in the United States, about 10 on average offer plans through Obamacare in each state. About 5% of Obamacare users have only 1 or 2 insurers to choose from. Obamacare created a system that left American families with fewer choices, said Senator Rick Scott, who proposed legislation to improve Obamacare in 2025. Scott's proposal would have allowed consumers to buy health insurance across state lines, which is now prohibited by most states with limited exceptions. 5 years ago, Senators Tim Kaine, Democrat of Virginia, and Michael Bennet, Democrat of Colorado, proposed allowing more choice by allowing consumers to opt into Medicare in counties where fewer than 3 insurers offered Obamacare plans. That plan, called Medicare X, later expanded to other counties with high-cost plans and few options. Bennett and Kaine said the plan would both reduce costs and offer health coverage to people with few options. The plan was introduced in 2021 and again last year. Others have suggested broadening the availability of catastrophic plans, which have low premiums but high deductibles. That proposal and Scott's proposal had been suggested by Democrats in 2017. Still others have proposed allowing insurers to offer short-term health insurance plans through Obamacare. These 3-month to 6-month plans are popular with people between jobs or in a waiting period for employer-sponsored insurance. Short-term plans typically offer far lower premiums, substantially broader provider networks, and greater overall value for many middle-class families. Brian Blaze, president of Paragon Health Institute, said. None of these ideas received a vote in Congress. Conservatives were skeptical of the Medicare X proposal, seeing it as a step toward socialized medicine. Democrats claim that they just want to offer another health insurance choice, but Medicare X would simply nudge us along toward the Democrats' endgame, a complete government takeover of the health insurance system. Sally C. Pipes, president and CEO of the Pacific Research Institute, wrote on the think tank's website in 2024. And a lot of countries today do have this socialized medicine, which is basically what we have in South Korea and in Japan. And I guess I think the UK system is kind of a socialized system as well, if I understand it correctly. And many other countries do that as well. But socialized in the sense that it is subsidized by taxes, or at least revenue from the government, which comes from taxes or from borrowing, right? So either you're collecting more money on taxes or you're borrowing more money, which means that you're actually collecting taxes from future generations indirectly. And so, as Thatcher said, at some point you run out of other people's money. And these plans really are not sustainable over the long run. They have been sustainable for a few decades, but also, almost every country in the world now is getting in trouble with debt, and especially the United States with debt. And so, eventually, health industry needs to be able to support itself, and that means privatization, and that the free market principles need to be applied to healthcare in order for it to be sustainable over a long run, right? And also and what happens when you have a monopoly? Right now, there's a monopoly, right? In socialized medicine, there's a monopoly. So then what do you have? Well, in every monopoly, prices go up, quality goes down. This is always the case. Okay, let's see here. Left-leaning politicians and analysts have been skeptical of any plan that would offer what they see as inferior health coverage through Obamacare, including short-term insurance and catastrophic plans. Short-term coverage is not community rated. That is, people can be charged more based on their health status, gender, or other factors. And it typically does not cover pre-existing conditions. Mark A. Hall and Michael J. McHugh wrote in 2022 article for the Commonwealth Fund. And then number 2, empower consumers. Obamacare subsidizes health insurance for people earning between 100% and 400% of the federal poverty level. The subsidy comes in the form of an advanced tax credit, but the money is paid directly to insurance companies, not to the insured individuals. See, that's you can see already where the insurance companies love this. Yeah, they're getting just piles of cash just coming their way. President Donald Trump and several others have proposed making those funds available to consumers, which they say would increase choice and lower prices. Trump's plan and some others would provide funded health savings accounts, which enrollees could use only for health expenses. That would include buying insurance, paying out-of-pocket expenses, or buying healthcare directly from providers. Scott made a similar proposal, as did Senators Mike Crapo, Republican of Idaho, and Bill Cassidy, Republican of Louisiana, and Senator Roger Marshall, Republican of Kansas. Giving billions of taxpayer dollars to insurers is not working to reduce health insurance premiums for patients, Crapo said in a statement announcing his plan in December 2025. We need to give Americans more control over their own healthcare decisions. The Crapo-Cassidy plan failed to advance in the Senate last year. None of the other plans have even been put to a vote. Democrats have opposed the idea as a halfway measure that would undermine the value of Obamacare. And for Democrats, Obamacare has become a kind of a holy grail, right? Remember, Obama said when this came into being, they said, okay, now we're going to have a class of people who will always vote Democrat because of Obamacare. Yeah. That was the purpose of that. Excuse me. Health savings accounts are available only with insurance plans that have a high deductible, leading some analysts to conclude that they wouldn't benefit people who have the most trouble affording health care. While healthier people could benefit, sicker people could get stuck with higher premiums or higher out-of-pocket health costs, wrote Larry Levitt and Cynthia Cox of KFF. Democrats objected also to other provisions of the Crapo-Cassidy plan, like verifying citizenship and immigration status before enrolling in coverage, and excluding abortion as an essential health benefit in Obamacare plans. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer called the plan junk insurance. And then fix structural problems, it says. One feature of Obamacare was intended to lower premium prices, but produced the opposite result. Insurers must offer cost-sharing reductions to customers making less than 250% of the federal poverty level who choose a silver level plan. What is the federal poverty level right now? Okay. For an individual, $15,960 annually. For a married couple, $21,640 annually. How many of you qualify for that? Actually, let's see. All right. And then safe harbor amounts for the lower 48. And it gets complicated, of course. For households with more than 8 members. Okay, and these are figures that are used for determining eligibility for various assistance programs. For a married couple, $21,000 annually or $1,800 a month. For 2026. Okay. The cost sharing reductions mean lower copays and deductibles, which helps lower income enrollees. It also increases costs for insurers, so the federal government reimburse them for the added expense. But a federal judge ruled that those reimbursements were improper because Congress had never authorized funds for them through an appropriations bill. Cost-sharing reduction payments to insurers were discontinued in 2017. However, insurers are still required to offer the cost-sharing reductions. To compensate, insurers raised premiums on the silver level plans, a practice known as silver loading. Because all premium subsidies are based on the cost of silver level plan, any increase to silver level premiums has the knock-on effect of increasing federal subsidies on every plan sold through Obamacare. The overall effect added billions per year in costs to taxpayers. So the whole thing is subsidized by taxpayers, either current taxpayers or future taxpayers, and you eventually run out of other people's money. Politicians from both parties have called for Congress to fix the problem by appropriating money to pay for the cost-sharing reductions. That would save taxpayers nearly $37 billion and reduced premiums for the most common Obamacare plans by 11%, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Then Senator Lamar Jackson of Tennessee and Patty Murray of Washington proposed this and other program changes in 2017. The bipartisan House Problem Solvers Caucus also pitched the idea that year. Representative Marionette Miller Meeks, Republican of Iowa, introduced a health care bill in 2025 that included funding for cost-sharing reductions. The idea is included in Trump's Great Health Care Plan released in January. Despite having bipartisan support, this proposal appears to have been overshadowed by larger questions about Obamacare. The 2017 Murray-Alexander plan was proposed at a time when many Republicans were intent on repealing and replacing Obamacare. Trump opposed the proposal, according to then White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, because it did not go far enough to expand options and drive competition. This president certainly supports Republicans and Democrats coming to work together, but it's not a full approach when we need something to go a little bit further to get on board, Sanders told reporters in 2017. Democrats opposed the Mueller-Meeks proposal because it did not extend the expiring enhanced tax credits for Obamacare, which was their primary legislative aim in late 2025. Representative Bobby Scott urged colleagues to vote against Mueller-Meeks' proposal, saying this plan does nothing to extend the Obamacare enhanced tax credits, which are set to expire. Jeremy Nugahushian of the Competitive Enterprise Institute suggested that some policymakers oppose funding the cost-sharing reductions precisely because the higher federal subsidies that result from silver loading serve a political end. Some may prefer for the indirect subsidy increase because it raises the proportion of the population within insurance, Nugahushian wrote in January on the think tank's website. The legislative impasse over improving Obamacare appears to arise from the basic difference in approach by Republicans and Democrats to health care financing. Republicans generally favor deregulation and other marketplace reforms that they believe will increase competition and lower prices. As President Trump has said, he will make our healthcare system better by increasing transparency, promoting choice and competition, and expanding access to new affordable healthcare and insurance options, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt told the Poynter Institute in 2024. Republican proposals for Obamacare generally follow that blueprint, add choices, improve competition, and allow the market to lower prices. Democrats generally favor increased government intervention in the form of regulation and subsidization with the goal of ensuring access to health care services for everyone. Access to high-quality health care should be a right available to every single American, House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries said in December 2025. One of the ways we can make sure that we strive to achieve that principle is to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And here, Jeffries is bringing up an essential point for Democrats, that it is a right? That housing is a right, healthcare is a right, and this is a right, that is a right, and everything is a right. And that is something that I think needs to be discussed. Is in fact healthcare a right? Is it a right? Right. I would argue that it is not, and I think there are other ways in which the free market can and its competition can provide healthcare. And one of the reasons that Obamacare came about was that there was a big argument back then that a lot of Americans did not have health care, that did not have insurance. And as I just mentioned, my wife and I, for a while, did not have insurance. And there was actually, when Obamacare first came into being, there was actually a penalty for not having insurance and not having Obamacare. And we paid the penalty every year. It wasn't very much, and it was only a few years, but we paid the penalty rather than going on to Obamacare. And as I've mentioned, my wife and I eventually signed up, in addition to Medicare, signed up for something that is not insurance, but it's a medical bill sharing program. I think that is what's called. And there are a number of them out there, and you can do your own research on them. Um, the medical bill sharing program, I think it's called, which is not insurance, and it's a private thing, and it as far as I know, there is no subsidy from the government. Pretty sure there's no subsidy. Let me just make sure I'm giving you the right information here. Yeah, healthcare sharing. Oh, no, okay. Health cost sharing. Okay. My phone has come up with the particular program that my wife and I are involved in, but I don't want to give you that information because I don't want to favor uh, any program over another because you really need to do your own research on this. It says here, picture this: you have an unexpected, significant medical expense, and you're now faced with the unforeseen burden of medical debt. Even with health insurance, there are still often out-of-pocket costs for families and individuals. U.S. healthcare costs are on the rise. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, the 2023 average insurance premium for an individual was $703 a month, causing people to wonder, why is health insurance so expensive? And is there a better way? We think so. And this is coming from the website of the program that I'm involved in. Health cost sharing is an alternative health insurance. It is an out-of-the-box solution for paying medical costs and is often more affordable. Members of health cost sharing ministries pay monthly ministries because these are often Christian. And so, yeah, pay monthly amounts that are then used to share or pay other members' eligible medical bills. HCSMs are, in other words, health cost sharing ministries, are often nonprofit organizations and consist of members from a similar faith background. Since they are nonprofit, nearly all monthly membership amounts can go toward paying other members' medical bills. Health cost sharing has become a popular alternative to health insurance in the last decades, particularly after the Affordable Care Act was put into place. When looking into a health cost sharing ministry for your healthcare, here are some of the things to consider. Okay, well, I think define sharing. Okay, let's skip over some of this stuff. The concept of healthcare sharing is based on Acts 2 and 4 with the believers of the early church who held all things in common and pooled their resources to help one another. It is also based on Galatians 6:2, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Health cost sharing is modeled after these biblical passages. When coming together collectively to help and support one another, what seems like a huge burden to be lifted on one's own becomes lighter. Sharing medical bills among a group of people can make healthcare affordability a reality. And then it goes into their own program. Okay. All right, so that's an alternative that I don't see discussed a lot in the general press, and perhaps because it is often, as it says here, faith-based. And I suppose Buddhists can have their ministries and Muslims can have their ministries, and perhaps they do. But the one that my wife and I are involved in happens to be a Christian ministry, and we are quite satisfied with it. Of course, we're using it as a secondary insurance in addition to Medicare. Yeah. Democrat-led bills to extend these credits failed to advance in both houses. Right. And Obamacare's benchmark silver plan premiums for 2026 increased by about 26%. That's a huge increase, isn't it? And by the way, our cost has increased, but it has increased not because of inflation. It's simply increased because as we get older, they tell us, hey, you're older, and so you're going to be using more, you're going to be relying more on hospitals and doctors, so we need to charge you more. And so that's where the increase has been coming from. And it's not been anything like 26% or anything like that. In fact, I don't think between last year and this year, I don't think there was an increase at all. Yeah, I think we're paying the same this year as we did last year. Yeah. But so anyway, that's something to think about. But the important thing here is that this is a kind of a private alternative, and I'm pretty sure that they do not accept or do not receive government subsidy at all. Is my understanding, but I could be wrong about that. I want to be careful about saying that. Okay, so the Cheon Il Guk Constitution says the government must get out of healthcare. So even Medicare all these years. So I guess we're sort of looking at it that way, that we're just getting back our own money. And uh, I see that my camera suddenly turned off. Okay, let me get the video back on. Okay, there we go. And it's the wrong camera. Oh, which way? I see both cameras are. Anyway, so I don't know what's going on here, but anyway, the less government, more voluntary contributions and so forth. I think is certainly the way to go here. I see that is the wrong camera right now. Let me see if I can get the right camera going. Oh, I can't see it. Okay. Okay. There we go. Okay, now I'm back. Yeah, I don't know why that happens sometimes, but maybe the electrical connection there is not good. All right, so that is the lesson today or the discussion today on healthcare and the government. And I think one thing that Obamacare has taught us is that, well, like President Reagan said, the most fearful words in the English language, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. When the government tries to go into a problem and to help, then they really are not helping at all. And we'll see how this thing works out over time. But certainly, we need to move away from socialized medicine and more towards free market. And I think the health cost sharing programs may be a way for people to go if you look into it and you find that it is um, find that it's good for you, then you may want to go in that direction. One thing, of course, is that if it's Christian, then it means that they don't pay for abortion. They also don't pay for any illness or condition that arises as a result of smoking and drinking or drugs, and et cetera, et cetera. So there are a number of non-Christian lifestyles that they say, okay, if you get in, if you develop a health problem because of these lifestyles, then you're on your own. We're not going to pay for that. Which means that none of my premiums to that organization are going for abortion. None of my premiums are going for drug addicts or alcohol, people who get in trouble with alcohol. So, for example, traffic accidents as a result of a DUI, or smoking and sort of cancer that comes as a result of smoking and things like that. So my premiums do not go for any of those conditions, which I'm very happy with in that respect. Okay. All right, let's see. I did not intend this to become a infomercial for our program, but anyway, we are happy with it. All righty, let's see now. What else is going on? Yes, I guess we have to go to the war, don't we? All right, okay. Well, let's take a look at what's going on. These people. Let's see here. Let's look at all the epic times. Iran war widens with shipping disruptions, drone attacks, and energy shock warnings. missiles launched from Iran toward Israel just now, and also no plans to release the emergency oil reserve. The IEA says the emergency oil reserves is a bunch of oil that the U.S. government keeps on hand to release in an emergency. So if if the price gets too high, and then that'll bring the price down. Let's do a click here, all updates. Qatar Energy Minister warns Middle East war could bring down the economies of the world. Okay. Yeah, but Inma, could, remember could is a word that is used to put fear into our hearts. So let's be careful about that. No expansion of military objectives in Iran, Hegseth says. And Iran denies it closed the Strait of Hormuz as traffic plunges. Okay, that's interesting. Who, us? No, no, no. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go on through, go on through. Who's going to dare? Because I think there's already one tanker off of Kuwait that was set afire. I guess Iran is not. I don't know what I don't know what their position is on that one. And Trump touts swift progress in operation against Iran. But he says Cuba is also on his to-do list. Oh boy, what happened to our peace president? Suddenly, I don't know. On New Year's Day, he woke up and what happened to him on New Year's Eve? What happened there? First it was Venezuela, then Iran, and now Cuba, and mhm. Where's North Korea on that list? Where's China on that list? Anyway, nearly 20,000 Americans have safely returned home. All right, well that's good. Trump's war against Iran, America returns to role as the world's policeman. U.S. issues India 30-day waiver and da-da-da-da-da. Okay. And federal agents in Chicago can use tear gas, other measures to court after court vacates injunction. Mm. And then we have what? Student loan reckoning, Brazil, historical crossroads, uh, silent revolution, why millions now look to leave social media. All right. Okay, well, let's go to Breitbart and see what's going on there. And, oh yeah, Kristi Noem has been relieved of her duties at the Department of Homeland Security. And now the governor of Minnesota wants to bring her to Minnesota to investigate her and have her answer questions there in front of the state legislature, apparently. And let's see. Oh yeah, but DHS continues to not be funded by Congress. Iran missile strikes down 90%, progress much better than expected, he says. And here, U.S. and Venezuela agreed to restore diplomatic ties on the anniversary of Hugo Chavez's death. Okay. And then let's see if I can go to Newsmax. Might talk you too. Okay. I'm gonna have to release my doesn't like the VPN. Okay. All right, let's see here. Treasury eyes swift action as Iran conflict pushes fuel costs up. So the Treasury Department is somehow going to pressure on U.S. energy costs. But Trump on gas prices, if they rise, they rise. But the Dow falls nearly 800 points as well. Surges to $85. Okay. And then Venezuela renewing up economic or diplomatic ties there. And the U.S. says that the military force only way to defeat cartels. That may be true. Let's see if we can go there. Yeah, okay. White House official Stephen Miller told a gathering of Latin American military leaders on Thursday that drug cartels can only be defeated with military force. Let's see if I can get rid of this. I guess not. Okay. The comments make explicit a shift in U.S. policy under President Donald Trump that has seen the Pentagon regularly target suspected drug boats, seize the president of Venezuela, and aid Mexico last month in its operation to capture the country's most wanted cartel boss. All right, we're out of time. All right, so I'll be here on Saturday tomorrow. And just another reminder that we're going into summertime on Monday. So just if you're outside the United States, understand that it's going to bring a 1 hour difference. All right. God bless, Godspeed, may His kingdom come quickly.